Good evening, everyone. It's Monday night, and I'm a little bit behind, so I thought it was time to do another review for some Star versus the Forces of Evil. We haven't yet talked about last week's episode, specifically Star versus Echo Creek and Wand to Wand, so I'm going to take a little time to do that today. Judging by how long the last Star versus video ended up running, I don't really want to go that long again in a single session because I feel it was just a little, too long to watch. And I certainly don't blame people who didn't want to devote 50 minutes to listening to me rant about an episode. So we're implementing a change with the Star Versus this week, and I will now be doing separate videos for each individual episode. So in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about Star versus Echo Creek specifically. Before I get into that, just a little bit of news about some things that are going on with my reviews, what I'm going to be doing. I've talked a few times about doing Steven Universe, and I tackled the first few episodes of Summer of Steven, and I haven't been back to address it since. And that's really because there's just so much material to go over. And with that amount of it, I really don't want to just gloss over episodes or shortchange anything. So I've actually decided to hold off and wait until the main summer event ends. I believe week 4, which is just begun now, will be the last week of the whole Summer of Steven thing. We'll still have new episodes coming, but not nearly on so fast, like on this daily basis that we have been. And that will allow me some time to do a few videos to break down things, because that's a fantastic series and I want to give it the attention it deserves. So there will be discussion of that coming, but it's going to be a little bit further out than that. Of course, I still have to get to the My Little Pony episode from this last week, and I intend to address that sometime in this coming week. But for right now, we're going to discuss Star versus Echo Creek, one of the, I guess I can't say latest anymore, but one of the recent new episodes to the show. Anyone who's been watching my reviews of Star Versus knows how much I loathe and despise what Season 2 has begun. The dumbing down of the characters, the complete changing of Earth into this kind of random space where just anything can happen instead of having it be a normal world. And that seems to have been on the decline with these recent episodes. I can actually stand up and say that Star vs. Echo Creek, an episode which I expected to thoroughly hate going into it based purely on its description and feedback I'd gotten from some other people. But I have to say, I enjoyed this episode. I also enjoyed Wand to Wand, which I'll talk to in that review as well. Now, I say I enjoyed them, and I did. There's certainly big steps in the right direction. Right out of the gate, I just want to say that this is still nowhere near as good as Season 1. Even some of my least favorite episodes from Season 1 are better than these two particular episodes. However, that said, this is a huge step in the right direction. The characters weren't written to be so stupid this time, specifically Marco and Star. The world, everything seemed more or less right with the world. I can quibble about a few things here or there that I will do during this review, but for the most part, things are looking better. Hopefully, we'll see things continue in this direction, and Season 2 will be actually something I can look forward to. Going into this week, I described it to those that I watch it with as I'm about to be punched in the face for 22 minutes, which is what the last batch of episodes felt like. This whole season has pretty much felt that way, with the exception of Ludo in the Wild, up until now. So now we're finally starting to see some actual inkling of the characters that I can remember from Season 1, and we're starting to see some of the better level of writing that permeated all of Season 1 and really made this show so awesome to begin with. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. First off, let me just get the credits out of the way here so we know who deserves the credit and who deserves the blame, as it were. As we're seeing these people a lot with the stories this season. So the story was written by Dominic Bisignato, Todd Casey, Aaron Hammersley, and Darren Nefsey. And again, when we're talking about the story being written, that actually means the whole concept, like what this episode was going to be about. They came up with the framework of it and decided what was going to happen into it. That is separate from the actual writing of the episode, the people that are responsible for the actual dialogue and all the little things that tend to happen in it. So the writing and storyboarding was done by Dominic Bisignato, who's had a huge hand in most episodes lately. Also, some girls here. We've got Sabrina Cotugno, Amelia Lorenz, Letang, that's an interesting name, and lastly, Giancarlo Volpe. And Giancarlo Volpe also directed this particular episode. So I'm going over these names even though they're in the show. I just want to know, keep track of who deserves the credit and who deserves the blame. And with Dominic and Aaron and Darren seem to have been the lead story writers this season. They haven't necessarily written the nitty gritty of all the episodes, but they've been coming up with the story to most of the episodes we've been seeing, especially the bad ones. And Dominic Bisignato and Aaron Hammersley were huge forces in the first season. They did a lot of the really good episodes, and they worked together sometimes in groups on episodes. Sometimes they worked just themselves, and sometimes they were solo acts doing different things. But they've both done a tremendous amount of work on this series. And of course, Darren Nessie is the talented woman who actually created the whole thing. And she really didn't have too much in terms of credits in the last season. She was only involved in a handful of episodes, so she definitely seems to be a little more involved this season. I don't know if that's the reason for the negative changes to the show or not. I want to be careful about leveling blame and accusations at anybody without hard facts. So I'm certainly not going to get into that. But the fact is that she is more involved with it for better or for worse. So with the Star versus Echo Creek episode, the description of it sounds very stupid. Star destroys a police squad car and goes on the run. Just the plot of it sounded like it was going to be horrendous, typical of the really inane, stupid things they've been doing in season 2. But we actually saw some pretty good things. I like the fact that we saw this opened with Star and Marco just hanging out at this, I guess it's kind of a taqueria place. It looks almost a little bit in ways like the Bueno Nacho. We don't see from Kim Possible. We certainly don't see the inside of it, and that may just be kind of like a small homage to things. So I'm not going to read anything more into it than that. Obviously, given Marco's heritage, he definitely seems to enjoy the Mexican food. He's really good at making nachos, and we've seen him eating other types of Mexican foods before. So this really isn't a big leap that they would be visiting a Mexican fast foodish restaurant or taqueria. So this was nice, and I love Star's line where she's at the beginning where she says that food is anarchy. Marco is an absolute horror that she's putting sugar on her burritos, and Star's just like, hey man, food is anarchy, do whatever you want to do. And she's just loving what she loves, even if Marco finds it disgusting. Meanwhile, Marco's basically nitpicking the recipe of the beverage that they're drinking there. It's a nice little showing of their differences in personalities, something we haven't seen a lot of in this season. So I'm very glad that they took the time to do this. Thirsty tonight. So moving on from that, we see Star basically get on a sugar high, and then she starts setting off fireworks with her wand, which inevitably cause destruction, as is wont to happen with Star. And she knocks the giant taco from the fast food sign off of its post, and it smashes down and crushes a police car. Fortunately, no one is inside of it, but having destroyed police property, she's now not really understanding the true consequences of this, as Marco basically pulls her into an alley and tries to tell her that, she needs to be really worried about what happened. She's just like, accidents happen. I'll get my dad to send him some gold and everything will be just fine. And Marco's like, no, it's not going to be fine. You could go to jail for this. Here is a bit of a missed opportunity. We see Star immediately kind of gasp and be like, you mean like St. O's? Which is a good thing because we know about her phobia of St. O's throughout season 1. I do think they missed the opportunity here to have her let out one of her typical screams and try to hide because of her general phobia of St. O's. On the other side of that equation, I'm going to give it a bit of a pass at the same time because Star having been to St. O's, and she tried to break Ponyhead out of there, and after the whole adventure, she says how she grew as a person somewhat, or at least she kind of pretends she grew as a person. It's still clear that she's pretty much terrified of St. O's, and she hasn't really grown at the end of that episode. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but again, it's not something really worth dwelling on for more than a moment or so. Possibly a missed opportunity to call back to that there, but nothing I'm going to drag the writers over the hot coals for on this one. From this point forward, after Marco explains to her the whole concept of jail and the orange jumpsuits and making hash browns she can't eat and things like that, Star basically decides to go on the lam. She runs away from Marco. She runs away from everything she knows on Earth, and she decides to hide down by the river. As we saw briefly in the Benagic incident, there's a river that runs through Echo Creek, and it kind of has a big, I guess you could almost call it drainage basin, because it dips way, way down, so that I guess the rainwater or any dams or something that let water out through there, it won't flood out the town, which is of course good engineering. But because of the way it's engineered and the usual relatively low level of the water, it becomes kind of this path that different people tend to walk on, and it's intimated that other people tend to kind of congregate down there or retreat to that area when they've messed up for whatever reason, whether they're on the lam from the law, on the lam from parents looking for a place to hide out, whatever. So it is just this kind of almost lawless no man's land, or at least that's how it's kind of presented to us. The actual area that Star is hanging out in when we see it, it's almost about what you would expect. It's really not all that seedy or dangerous. It's definitely kind of desolate and empty and a little bit dirty down there. But Star kind of makes it her own. First, she tries to magic herself up a little palace, and then, hallelujah, she's smart enough to realize that this is a bad idea because people might notice it. And she then magics it away and starts trying to build her own little ramshackle huts, none of which really work. She ends up, after trying to build something out of a few cement blocks and tires and sticks that falls apart on her, she eventually ends up making a giant pile of leaves and just kind of lying in it, huddling over a small flame coming out of her wand to get through the night. Being that it seems that Star and Marco live in essentially a desert area, what does make sense that it would get relatively cold at night there. So that was a nice little touch. She then goes on to meet this woman who invites her into her home, almost in a Hansel and Gretel style thing. Only the woman turns out not to be a witch, but rather just this kind of kindly woman who likes to steal hair and make sorts of different things with it, like tapestry and pillows, blankets. And her favorite thing, of course, is to make a nest for wounded birds and stuff. And we even get a little cameo here of the gentleman who happens to run the local music shop, the one Star mistook for a werewolf in the Benagic incident. Again, I know in almost every one of these videos I reference the Benagic incident, and full disclosure, it is probably my favorite episode of the series for various different reasons. But to be honest, the series itself is the one that keeps referencing it. I wouldn't feel the need to bring it up in every episode if there wasn't actually a reason to. The series either directly or indirectly referencing it, or the series doing something that contradicts something that happened to be in that episode. So I do talk about it a lot, but there is an actual reason for it. I'm not just struggling to find a way to bring it into every episode. It is my favorite Star episode, but it's not that important a thing to me. So from here, we have some really nice, good, little risky writing moments. I love the moment where this woman is trying to tell Star about her philosophy and the way that she lives, and Star is eating the pancakes that this woman has made, and the whole time the woman is actually staring at Star's hair, like kind of the part above her hairband. Her hair always came into these little horns when she tends to be wearing it, despite the actual ones that are on the hairband itself, and then of course her flowing mane in the back. So she's actually having her hair stared at, and when the woman starts talking about how she likes to steal hair, you see Star start to get a little bit freaked out, and she says this great line, "Hey, my eyes are down here," which is a correct reversal because, of course, you know, the old joke is that guys like to have a conversation with your breasts and are staring there looking at your chest rather than looking at your face, and this kind of puts a reversal on it by being like, "Hey, my eyes are down here," rather than "my eyes are up here." It's a minor thing. It's, you know, a joke that they kind of got away with, kind of slips under the radar. Not so terribly risque that it's like, I can't believe they did that. But it's a nice little touch, and I was glad to see it in there. From here, we see the woman has the missing photo. There's a poster of Star with her picture on it. You know, have you seen this girl? So people are looking for her. And the woman wants to, you know, contact the authorities and take Star home. Not out of any maliciousness, not to get a reward or anything like that. She just wants, Star to be okay. She wants her to be with the people that actually care about her. Star immediately rejects this notion for fear of what will happen to her if she turns herself in, and she runs out of the house and proceeds to dive into the river. There's probably probably my biggest gripe in the episode here. She dives in the river, she's all wet, and while she's underwater, we then see her use her wand to form a bubble around herself, which is fine. That's something she should be able to do with her wand. My quibble is that her clothes are magically completely dry, like she never got wet at all, and I feel like she should have had to cast some other kind of spell for that. Again, I'm nitpicking, and I know that. I'm not trying to dwell on these things or point out that the episode totally failed because of something like this. It's a minor quibble, but it's just one of those things that they could have really threw in there to make the show have a little bit more. I guess I hesitate to use the term, but a little more realness to it. Even so, it's still a good episode. Moving on from this, we see Star go to the bottom of the river, and we have this almost riff on "Under the Sea" from The Little Mermaid, really going back in time here, about Star being on the land and staying down here, and all the wonderful things that she can do at the bottom of this river, where all the things she can do to amuse herself and keep happy. But the deal is that she's never able to go home and see her family again. At the end of the sequence, it's revealed that none of what she's seeing is real, and it's just her mind trying to convince her that she's made the right decision to run away, rather than to go back to the people that love her. Ultimately, in the end, Star realizes that she'll never be able to see Marco again, and she comes to the conclusion that she would rather have to go to jail and see Marco once a month than never be able to see him again and maintain her freedom. So she comes back to the surface where the police are indeed. They seem to be looking for something. We're not sure if it's her specifically or not, but Star turns herself in. She then ends up at the police station where Marco is curled up in a chair, half asleep. He hasn't really rested. He's been trying to find her ever since she ran away. A few minor little quibbles here. Specifically, he didn't call her. We know from the last few episodes that she has her little I called her cellular mirror, so that she can be reached, and he didn't call her in this episode, so that was a minor continuity break. That, and there was a gag about the woman that Star met having this telephone, the old Canon string the kids play with, and the police happened to have one of these, and that's how they got in touch with her. That was kind of a silly world break kind of thing, but it's really the only thing in this episode that was kind of an actual break in how the Earth actually functions and works. So I'm going to let him get away with that. I am going to point it out, but I'm not going to sit here and rant and rave about it, because aside from that, they didn't do anything like that in this episode aside from that, and those were all positives. So overall here, we have a good episode. We get this cute little Starco moment at the end where they hug, and everything goes back to normal, and it turns out that the car that Star ruined, they were going to crush it anyway in the demolition derby. So all's well that ends well, although since Star still did commit a crime, she is sentenced to having to basically wash the local police precincts, to having to wash their cars, which she's found doing by hand, and then she tries doing magic and ends up making things worse, and probably ends up getting herself a worse punishment. We'll never know, because the episode ends at that particular point. But in terms of a Star versus all's well that ends well, Star pretty much lives and doesn't learn in terms of doing things with her magic that she shouldn't necessarily do. That actually will be something that's picked up on a little bit in Wand to Wand, but I don't want to broach it too much here, because we're going to talk about that in the next episode. So that's pretty much what we have going on. That's in a nutshell. That is Star versus Echo Creek. A much better episode than I really thought they were capable of at this point in time, since season 2 has been so bad and the writing has just been so illogical. So the fact that we did see overall a good episode, I'm going to give it about a 7 out of 10. It wasn't great. They didn't hit it out of the park or anything like that. But compared to how poor this season has been, this was a really, really big step, and I'm hoping to see things continue on this course and we can get back to the level of writing that was present all throughout season one. So I think that things are moving in the right direction, especially since I can point out other positive things in Wand to Wand. We'll know with next week's. The previews for episodes like Starstruck have made me kind of cringe, but it's just a preview. The previews for this episode made me cringe, and it turned out to be something good. So I'm not going to judge it before I actually see it, and hopefully things will definitely turn out better. It's really good to see the show moving in the right direction, and I'm trying to regain the confidence in the staff of the show that they can recapture their former glory and continue on. And this will be a show I really look forward to every week again, instead of something that I'm just kind of watching and really not knowing what to expect and questioning whether or not I should be continuing to watch it. I have, even if the show does go way back downhill again, I have said before, and I'll say it again, I will continue watching it, even though I don't really want to in some cases, mainly because I want to chronicle the demise of this show. It's something that was really near and dear to me after season one, and there needs to be some kind of record of the mistakes that it's made. But hey, when the show gets it right, I'm definitely going to give them credit for making it right. So this was a good first step. Let's see it continue on in the coming episodes. So probably tomorrow I'll tackle doing the review of Wand to Wand, and then from there I'll probably look into My Little Pony, and Steven Universe will be done another week. Once we start getting away from the new episodes all the time with some shows as the seasons start to enter dry spells, I'll take the time to do some vignettes on other things that I want to do and just haven't because of the time right now. It's hard enough just trying to stay somewhat current with these particular shows. So that is the review of Star vs. Echo Creek. Look forward to Wand soon, and thanks again for watching, guys. You have yourselves a good night.